the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
All right, I'm joined by Keith Smith, our resident NBA expert, and we need some NBA expertise because throw the math out of it, Keith. That's what the NBA told us last night. The odds to win the number one pick, I guess I don't have the data in front of me, but I'm not sure they've ever been this screwy. I think I saw the top three landed in what would have been a 0.0014 percentile in terms of the odds to have those top three come to fruition. It's not how we drew it up. It's probably not how any of us were projecting or even analyzing how this lottery could have fallen into place, but we're here and we have the Dallas Mavericks and the San Antonio Spurs, at least off the top two there. Your thoughts on how that shook down and I guess where things are headed with those two teams specifically?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely incredible that this is where we are. Obviously, it's I don't even know, like you said, you throw the math out. I can't even wrap my head around, this. I had a friend of mine who works in the league say, maybe we should just throw like ping pong balls with logos on them in a drum and mix it up that way, because that's how crazy this is. But yeah, so we're in a spot now where Dallas has a ton of options here. The easy one is stay right where you are, pick the generational prospect and pick Cooper Flagg and move forward. And now you've got kind of your bridge guy, even if, this Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving era ends sometime in the next 3 seasons. Now you've got the guy you're going to build around moving forward. You get the goodwill with the franchise. They're all fired up there. The other option is, do you trade it? Do you say, hey, I built this team? Nico Harrison said part of his thing was they want to win now and they don't know how much time they have and those things. Do you look at, all right, whatever superstars are available this summer, and it seems like there's going to be a lot of them. This is now, the best trade chip in the entire league. Whereas like if Utah had stuck and won the first pick in the lottery, they weren't going to trade it. They were going to take Cooper Flagg. There's no drama there. But for Dallas, you can see a world where maybe what makes sense is trading it. So that brings a ton of intrigue with the first overall pick that just generally doesn't exist in a year, especially in a year where there's the prospect this good.
I think something will happen from Dallas this offseason now, whether it's trading the pick or trading 2 to 3 significant players to free up, room for Cooper Flagg, etc. Where's your sense? Just your projection right now, Keith, where Dallas is going to be in the next 3 to 4 months?
Yeah, I think they're going to listen at least, and maybe if the news yesterday, which I know that's not what we're talking about today, but the Giannis Antetokounmpo news that he's open-minded to a trade, that is essentially saying, yeah, let's see what's out there.
We're
right?
listening.
Let's be grown-ups about this. This is just the idea of Giannis saying, hey, I don't want to be traded to, all respect meant, but I don't want to be traded to the Wizards. But let's at least, all right, the right team comes along. And if you're Dallas and you start thinking about, and I can put together a group of Giannis and AD and wait it out till Kyrie comes back. And there's a lot of thoughts out there that normally like an ACL tear becomes almost a 1-year injury, but there's a lot of thought of Kyrie may come back earlier because he's not trying to protect 10, 12 years of a career. He's only got probably 5 years left anyway. So if 6, 7 years from now, he's, has to have another surgery, it's probably not taking time off his career. So there's a thought of, all right, let's go get him. And that's a different world than where you were living in with the Mavs picking at 11th. That pick doesn't have that kind of cachet. And if you're the Bucks, you at least have to listen, right? Because that is, all right, we're now getting a chance to restart, but we're restarting with the guy, right? Like we're getting, somebody who can be our next franchise guy. And a year from now, we're probably not ready to contend. So maybe then we look at a Damian Lillard trade and we're really moving it out that way. But for Dallas, what becomes, kind of a little bit of, I think, an underrated story in this is they took on about $8 million more in this, moving up from 11 to 1. They are now, this is without Kyrie Irving in the fold, and we know they're going to re-sign Kyrie Irving, they're about $25.5 million under the tax, about $33.5 million under the first apron, $45.5 million under the second apron. Even if you think Kyrie coming off injury is going to get $40 million, you're talking about, all right, you're a team that's now facing the apron. So it's not quite as easy as draft Cooper Flagg, re-sign Kyrie Irving, and go make these, 3 other trades and off we go. It's tricky. It's a trade-off you make right now you got to get your cap guys in the room, and you got to really work with your front office. But that's something that I haven't seen talked about very much is, it just makes things that much tighter for Dallas. But again, it's all right. Now we have control of the draft, and it keeps saying generational prospect. It doesn't feel fair when we had Wembanyama 2 years ago, but sometimes that's how it works, right? Sometimes you get guys this quickly, and that's where we're at.
Okay. Let's quickly move to San Antonio since you kind of buried the lead there with Wembanyama. I have a feeling, look, Dallas jumped up 10 spots, San Antonio up 6 spots. By the way, all of the 11 teams in this lottery moved somewhere up or down, which is, that's just unprecedented that nobody fell exactly where they belonged mathematically. So San Antonio jumps up to 2, which is maybe even more fascinating, right? In the grand scheme of things, because of where they are in their rebuilding process, and certainly as they take this next step, it's an endless bounty of opportunities here, Keith, right? With what they can do, including an extremely aggressive move to move a Stefan Castle or somebody for for a Giannis, for one of these names that we know are going to be available this offseason. Where are they sitting? Is it a similar situation to Dallas for you, that every card is on the table and it's simply, how much they're willing to give up right now?
Yeah, I think so, because they already have Wembanyama, and he's already that good. And everybody gets so obsessed with timelines. And it's like, yeah, until your guy in year 2 is already ready to lift you to be a playoff team. And they would have probably stayed in play-in tournament contention this year if Wembanyama had stayed healthy. They would have certainly been in the mix, I think. And then you're looking at, all right, now come back, another year of growth for him, some moves around the edges, and now we're ready to push for a top 6 spot and be a playoff team. Well, now you can accelerate that very quickly, because not only do they have the second pick, but they also have the 14th pick. Yeah. So you're in a spot where, okay, that's 2 picks. I always try to tell people too, a little bit different than like the NFL draft, where like 2 and 14 maybe get you in the conversation and move up to 1. It wouldn't in the NBA. Like, it's just not how it works.
Especially not this year. Yeah.
Exactly. Not this year. And then you're not able to supplement it with, all right, well, we'll trade you 4th for your 6th and those things, because it's only a 2-round draft. So, but if you're the Spurs, now your conversation this morning needs to be, all right, we've got these picks. We know we have Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox. Like, those guys are locked in. They're going to be here. But I think everybody else is pretty much on the table. If, whether that's Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, all nice players, but not star level guys. Whether it is, all right, we have Castle, but we have a chance to go get a better fitting guard wing with De'Aaron Fox and Wembanyama. You probably have that conversation as well. Because if you could pair Castle, one of the veteran guys, the draft picks, and go get superstar X, you're probably doing it. Are you doing that for Kevin Durant? Maybe not, right? Like, he's older. He needs a new contract after the season. You may not want to go there. But again, and I'm going to keep bringing it up, if it's Giannis, that's a big you're one. Having the conversation, right? Yeah. And if you're the Bucks, you're at least going to listen, because you're going to say, oh, well, we can add a young guy, add a player who's pretty decent, in the trade as well, and then go get these draft picks. The other thing for the Spurs that Dallas doesn't have, the Spurs have other additional draft assets down the line coming their way. So they're in a spot where all of a sudden it's like, all right, yeah, we can make some other trades. Like, they didn't look like it really mattered 12-ish hours ago, but they have a swap with the Celtics that's only top 1 protected coming up in about 4 years. That now may have value, because who knows what the Celtics will look like in 4 years compared to what they look, where it looked like they were going to be. So that's if you're San Antonio, you're in a spot where, yeah, you're not in the Cooper Flag driver seat, but you can control a lot of this draft in a big way.
In terms of the finances of San Antonio, and let's not get down too far because we've got other shows for those conversations, but they do feel like such a linchpin team for the upcoming offseason, both from a personal standpoint and from I think what they could attract with other 3-team trades and things like that. Are they feeling the benefits of Wembanyama being young and cheap, or do they have veterans that are kind of log jamming their ability to be major players in the offseason?
It's oddly a little bit of both, but that's more of a this summer issue than it is a year from now issue. So if you do, and I don't want, like you said, don't want to go too super deep into it, but this year they're sitting on a couple contracts where it's sort of like, yeah, probably not exactly where we would want to be, right? You have Harrison Barnes on the books at $19 million. You've got Keldon Johnson. You've got Devin Vassell's contract. But in a couple years, what you're going to have is you're going to have the last year of Wembanyama. I know this is, whenever I say these things to people like their eyes like get wide like dinner plates. But we're already 1 year away from extension time for Victor Wembanyama. Like he just completed year 2, but that's how quick it goes.
By the way, it's great because I live in the baseball and football world, and it takes forever and it's too long. It just is.
Yeah,
so it's great.
Yeah. There is pressure when you have a player that good to do what you can while they are still quote unquote cheap. Right. Like he's basically making under the mid-level exception right now as the number 1 pick. And we have to remember too, he came in on a rookie scale that wasn't getting these 10% jumps year over year. So we're in a spot where his deal, was a little lesser as if, compared to if he was coming in now, like that's another thing. So with Wembanyama, you've got one more, you have this coming season, then one more year of him under the cost control rookie deal before pencil him in at the 30% max as long as he stays healthy, and that's done. So that's where there is a little bit of pressure to whether it be this direct summer, which is more likely because you have the draft capital right now. People know this is the number 2 pick in the draft, and add it together before you go next summer. All right, you're going to lock in with Wembanyama's extension. It won't kick in for a year, but you're going to have Fox presumably on a new contract. So at that point it is, all right, we've got a kind of a 2-year window here to do something big before this gets away from us in a way where, all right, now we're sitting with probably 2 max guys, and it's going to be that much harder to build up the rest of this team.
I made you answer a long question to get to this sort of hot take point, which is, there's going to be a bidding war for Giannis. Okay. There's no question. And there are certain teams that I think we like more, and certainly teams that fit more from an asset standpoint. And, that leads all the way up to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who have, the most draft picks, I think, accumulated in league history right now. So is there a world, Keith? And I think what you laid out makes me believe that there is, that San Antonio could get themselves in this conversation, not only with Giannis, but also by taking this Dame contract off of Milwaukee's plate, which I think ultimately is what the Bucks want to do, because you just laid out the Wembanyama 2-year window here of value before that rookie extension will kick in. That's Dame's window. Dame's got that player option in 2026, and it's explosive. And they'd be an apron team, and they'd be all the bad things. But you also began this conversation with Wembanyama is championship ready in year 2, and that's not normal on a rookie contract. Generally speaking, you've got to wait a good 4 to 5 years before a player of this age and your development process gets to a point where he is ready to be the guy. He is ready. So now you can put Dame Lillard in a somewhat, as a role player next to De'Aaron Fox, because I think from an injury standpoint, he's going to need to be that. And now you've got Giannis, and the offer that you can make with the picks, with the players, I don't know if they can match the salary. That'd be something you and the trade machine would have to work out.
Yeah.
But from a Godfather standpoint, I believe that San Antonio was in the window, in the construction window to make an offer like that.
Yeah, I mean, and there's fascinating ways to think through that, because that could be a way to lessen your outlay Because
you're taking on a bad contract.
Exactly. Yep. You're saying, hey, we're going to give you some stuff for Giannis. We're not going to give you all the stuff because we're going to also take back Dame. And then if you're the Bucks, it's like you are now free and clear. You are essentially.
And don't you agree, Keith? That's what they're looking for ultimately.
I think they'd love to, but I think they're realistic to know trading $100 million in salary is going to be really hard. Really hard. Here's the issue, right? It's very easy on the Bucks side because it's like, cool, we're getting off $100 million in salary. With the new apron rules, it's really hard. But this is where I have to mention came from the Spurs organization. It was a long time ago. But Sean Marks, sitting over there, raises a hand and is like, "You guys need some help? Like, what can I do?" Now, his first hand is going to be, "We want Giannis for ourselves." And but Sean Marks is a smart enough guy to know, hey, if that's not happening, if we can't beat their offer in terms of actual value, all right, why not siphon off some of that for ourselves, right? Like get some of it headed our way. If we want to go that way. And then that's where, if you're the Spurs, if you're like, yeah, well, we didn't have to take Dame and, we did it this way. And it's interesting at least to think about. And, I highly encourage people run off to the trade machine.
Yeah. Try to make it work with 4 teams. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I will plug for our trade machine. This is why we have the option to flip it to next year, because this is probably a next year's salaries thing more than a this year. So flip it to next year. First thing you do is go to the Nets page and renounce all the free agents so that you're working with, 50, 60, 70 million in cap space, and then get nuts, go crazy. And, I'm sure you can find ways to make it work. But yeah, that's the one part though, is in order to do something that big, you're going to need a third team in, and there's only one real third team in this summer. Like that's kind of the issue. Because otherwise, if you're the Spurs, you're walking into training camp with a team that's probably hard capped at the first apron.
Yeah.
And you have 3 dudes and a whole bunch of guys on minimums. And it's like, I mean, all right, 2 of those guys are pretty good and can win a whole bunch of games almost by themselves. But I don't know if the Spurs are psyched to, line up Wembanyama, Giannis, Mike, Scott, and Keith as the other 3 guys out there. That might get a little rough.
It feels a little Phoenixy, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Brooklyn is definitely that team, that
yes.
X factor team this offseason. And by the way, for personal standpoint too, I think they could be aggressive in trying to make a push, but we'll have to see. The lottery didn't help them. So I'm going to give you some rapid fire questions to get you out of here. The team you feel the worst for as of last night? Utah
and Washington. It's tied. They went in with tied for the best odds and came out with the worst possible outcome. Dropped 4 picks. That's brutal. That is just brutal, and that sets less for the Wizards, who they're full into this rebuild thing. But that sets the Jazz back considerably. They have essentially thrown away 2 straight seasons, trying to 3 really, but 2 seasons where they could have been something. They tossed away, and now it's like they pulled out of playing tournament contention and then tanked all of last year, and now here we are. And by social media reaction, Jazz fans are not happy. They're ready for heads to roll. There in Utah.
The team that, as of last night, will now likely change their course in July and August, whether that means trading a player of significance, etc.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, Dallas is the easy one, right? To say whether they, trade the pick or trade some players. I think Philly now has some really interesting options here, because they're going to get a good player at 3, or again, you could trade that pick. They have, without dipping into Embiid, George, or Maxey, they've got some tradable salaries that they can move as well. But we all know even if you feel good about those guys on day 1 of training camp being ready, you need more depth, because who knows how long it's going to last. With Maxey, I'll take off the table. He's probably fine. He probably could have played last year more. But Embiid and George, all right, are we going to get to Christmas before they're hurt? Where are we going to go? So I think there's options. Yeah. And then I will say Utah, there is a world where Utah now says, all right, now there's no quick path forward here. And the best thing to do is move Markkanen, move Colin Sexton, move John Collins, move Jordan Clarkson, really just, all right, it is what it is. It's going to be another awful year, but it's another strong draft class next season, especially at the top. And, maybe that's where it is. I just don't know how much patience the fan base is going to have for that for another year.
All right, a tough one. The team that will definitely not make their pick.
I'm just scrolling through. I'll say Philly because it doesn't make sense to, unless you start talking, all right, let's see what's out there for George or Embiid, or at least George. It doesn't make sense. You're what makes sense is to package that pick with some outgoing salary and get a player that fits better.
Did this change anything with New Orleans and Zion?
I don't think so. I think the major change would have been if they'd moved to 1.
Yeah.
I think they would have been far more likely to trade him. I think then it would have been, then we take it from like a 25% chance they trade him. I probably would have bumped it up to 50-50. And that might even be low.
So you're not super motivated about that move happening this offseason, huh?
I don't know why, if you're New Orleans, you have all the protections in the contract. So why not bring him back and see where it goes? I get it if you get the right offer and then you can be free and clear of this and you're like, hey, we're washing our hands of it, where we're going to go. Had you moved up to 1, I would have been like, yeah, I want out of this, like pass that burden on to somebody else to hope for the best. And if it works out for them, so be it. We have Cooper Flag and we'll move forward. Now that you don't, it's a little more, I'm probably a little more likely to hang in there for one more year and see what it looks like. Because what's it going to change? You're right back in the same spot next year anyway.
Yeah. Okay. And the last one, and I think it's a tough one. The team that you believe is most likely to trade all the way up to number 1 with Dallas.
Ooh.
Because it could be everybody, right?
Yeah. Ooh. We covered, we covered like the Bucks and those teams. I don't think you would do that in a deal for like KD. I don't think you do that. That seems, crazy. Hey, if you're Dallas, Devin Booker, maybe if it goes that direction, if you're Phoenix, but I don't Phoenix, Matt Ishbia has made it pretty clear he doesn't really want to rebuild and start over with a young team. So there's part of me that wonders, could the Spurs bowl over Dallas with an offer where it is, hey, let's send you a bunch of stuff and we'll add Flag alongside Wembanyama and maybe clear out some of that salary. So then we'll have Wembanyama, Flag, Fox, and not a lot left. And for Dallas, you might be like, all right, yeah, we moved down one spot. We traded out a generational prospect, but now look at all these guys we have. And now look at how deep our roster is, and we can survive until Kyrie gets back. There's a world with that. And then I think too, I have to wonder, does Danny Ainge reach out and make some kind of Godfather offer where it is, all right, you need a guard, so take your pick, of all of our guards, who do you want? We'll also give you Markkanen, and you get him if you want to go that way. We'll even take back, who do you want? You want off PJ Washington, you want off Daniel Gafford? Okay, we'll figure that out. We'll trade them somewhere else later. And not only you move back 1 to 5, but you got all these guys that can help you right now. And you want a Cleveland pick? You want a Minnesota pick? What picks do you want in the future that we have too? I kind of wonder, because I feel like they're under serious pressure there in Utah. And there could be a world where if you're Dallas, you're like, all right, that kind of makes sense for us. Really build out our depth. We still get a young player and we go forward that way.
I actually like that quite a bit. That's sort of the team I was identifying, because going from 5 to 1 is complicated, but not impossible. My God, though, the Dallas fan base. Can you even imagine if Utah swaps with Dallas with that number 1 pick? Just the scrutiny. I cannot even fathom. So for that alone, I kind of just hope they make the pick and let things calm down a little bit. But man, I think you're wrong. I think you're right here, Keith, that if Dallas is truly win now, I'm not sure Cooper Flag is that player, despite the talent that he possesses. You'd probably opt for 2 to 3 veterans in lieu of him, I think, if the plan is really to win over the next 2 seasons.
That in that what I think if you're Dallas and you made like a version of that Utah trade, their fans are like, what are we doing? If you're Dallas and you traded in a trade for Giannis, they're gonna be like, all right,
yeah, exactly.
You turned Luka into Giannis. It kind of is what it is, and great. Like we'll move forward with Giannis and AD and whatever we cobble together in the backcourt until Kyrie is back, and now that's what it'll be. So that feels far more likely to be the path. With that, and then it becomes, all right, where do we go? How do we fill up the depth on this team? Because you're going to get right back to being extremely top heavy in salary and all the other issues, but that's all right. I mean, you can probably figure that out. But yeah, it's Dallas landing number 1 just makes it so interesting because almost any other team, except for maybe Philly, you probably would have been like, well, they just take Cooper Flag and this is just start the clock now at 2, right?
Yeah,
like we don't even need to wait. Yeah, because it's Dallas, I'm a little. Yeah, I actually jokingly said to a friend of mine yesterday, I was like, I wouldn't go like making custom 32 flag jerseys in Dallas. Like, I'm not sure that's going to be how it goes down. Like, just be cautious with that one.
That's super fascinating. My God. Yeah. I came into this segment with you, Keith, thinking there's no chance Dallas trades this pick. But I was positive that San Antonio would be flipping out of this thing. And now you've got me thinking otherwise, because Dallas did try to make it Luka for Giannis. That was the only other call they made, right? In terms of that Luka trade was
as far as we know publicly.
Yep. So there's a world where they've already had this conversation, and maybe now Cooper Flag is that piece that bridges this gap. And that's boy, talk about some content for the next couple of months. Good for you, man.
Well, here's what I could say, Mike. 3 months ago, if you told me they were trading Luka, I would have laughed in your face and be like, that's ridiculous. So that's why now I'm even more so like, who knows what happens here.
If they've traded Luka, they're already the laughing stock. If they trade Cooper Flag, and now 3 years past that, Cooper Flag is Cooper Flag, you just have to move the team, right? I mean, you can't even show up to Dallas anymore if that happens.
Yeah, but you move the team as like an expansion team in the new NBA Europe League, because you don't even want to be like involved anywhere in the you don't never want to have to be anywhere in the continental United States again, I don't think.
Well, speaking of Toronto, no, we'll get out on that. The crazier lottery that you've dealt with in your
it's
basketball
up there.
lifetime here?
Yeah, this was the one that was so crazy. There's 2 that come to mind. When the Magic won the lottery the second year in a row after getting Shaq, and then they won
McGrady,
the Weber, which they turned into Penny Hardaway.
Yep.
That one was just bonkers. And then the Celtics hire Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino admittedly says, I only went to Boston because I thought we were getting Tim Duncan and Keith Van Horn, and they got neither of them. Both picks slid backwards. And that was even more crazy because it was harder to teams didn't slide like that then. And yet it happened. So those are the 2 that kind of immediately came to mind as this was playing out, because we were doing it live. And you get to 11 and it's like, oh no, it's not the Mavericks. Like, they moved up into the top 4. Then a couple later, it's like, it wasn't the Spurs. And now you're thinking, oh crap, Philly lost their pick. Like they and then like, oh, it's not Philly. So Philly moved as well. So I like in just the long-term ramifications for the league.
Right.
Last thing I'll say, the NBA has to at some level be like, we did not need another generational prospect going to the Western Conference. Like, bad. Western Conference teams have to be, absolutely out of their minds here that the 2 top picks fell where they fell, especially to teams that, quite frankly, aren't your traditional bad teams in Dallas and San Antonio. Like, West teams have to be like, we needed this, because that's the other thing. If you're Utah, you're looking at it now and you're like, we don't have a path now.
Insurmountable. Like, that's right.
All these teams are going to, we now have to pass like 12 teams to even get to reasonable contention, that may not even be enough. And that's where you get to a spot where it's like, all right, yeah, let's just, kind of bottom this thing back out. But bottoming it out didn't work this year. And I don't know. There's a lot of buzz today. Like, does the NBA need to consider changing it again? And
that was my last question. Question is where do you stand with the whole lottery process? And, obviously it's the topic du jour today with the conspiracy theories, but I mean, just in terms of how it's administered and all of that, Keith.
Yeah, how it's administered, I'm fine with. The NBA puts it out there every year after. I always say when people are like, oh, conspiracy theory, I'm like,
it's impossible.
Why would like 29 teams be like, yeah, let's get the Mavs the first pick? Like, because it's not going to come back around to you. If you're if you're the Utah Jazz, why are you doing that? And then I always say too, there's media members in the room. That would be, as someone who's in the media, that would be the story break of a lifetime that the NBA lottery is, there's magnets or whatever other foolishness people come up with. And it's, and then when people are like, but why not just air it on TV? They do show the videos out there. You can watch it this morning. I've retweeted it. It's incredibly boring. And there have been lotteries. I think it was the Zion lottery. I think the Pelicans won 3 times in a row.
Yeah.
And they were like, well, they can't win, the second and third. So it's like, all right, start over again, load it back up and rerun it. And it's like, that's just, it's just not a great product to watch. And you're doing it 1 to 4, and then everybody else slots in. It's not even a fun reveal that way either, right? So and people are like, well, the NHL did it that way and everybody loved it. And I was like, yeah, but the NHL lottery is watched by, I don't know, a 10th of the people watch the NBA lottery. So it's just, that's a little harder, to wrap my head around. But yeah, I don't know. I think you're going to hear more buzz for lottery reform. Sam Presti, it's very funny, pre-accumulating 9 million draft picks, was against this system then. Like, he was like, it just doesn't make sense to make it this hard. Like, bad teams should be able to get, the draft picks. That's how you replenish. And he's like, I get we have to have some variation on this. But yeah, I do wonder if you're going to get a lot of proposals, I think, from teams about let's tweak the odds. Let's tweak the odds again and, make it a little more advantageous for the bad teams.
Yeah, because I think you'll agree with this. It didn't stop teams from tanking. I mean, we had at least a half dozen teams aggressively tanking post-trade deadline in 2024. No question about it.
The number one thing that we could do to really impact tanking, no more protections on draft picks.
There you go.
Because if you made it, if the pick is gone, you have no benefit to tank. If like Philadelphia, if they didn't have protections, they could have played it out a little. If it was just gone, you play it out because who cares? Like that's crying over spilled milk. But when it is, well, we got to get bad enough to put ourselves in range to keep our pick. That's where it gets really rough. So that I think would go a long way towards curbing some of the tanking. But the full on, yeah, we've got like next year, a lot of people, are about next year's class too. You may see people like, yeah, we got to get into the top 3. Like that's where we're going for. And, and then you're going to have teams where just our season went sideways and it wasn't what we thought. And they'll try to bottom out for draft picks as well. So that I don't think is ever going to go away. And it's funny because and I know you're close to this with the NFL work you do. You hear people all the time say NFL teams don't tank. And I'm like, I watched games in the last 3 weeks of the season when it's like the quarterback has a, hurt finger and they're like, no, he's out, can't play. And it's like, well, what are we doing that for? And then my stupid team goes and wins their last game.
Week 18.
That's a whole other thing. But like, it's like, yeah, you get to these points where it's like everybody tanks to some level. But in the NFL, it just is, there's the direct reward, right? Of like, we will be, the first pick. In the NBA, it's like, all right, we'll get you. And I don't know, I'm not a super big, probably the nature of the work we do and all that and my personality. I'm not real big on karma and basketball gods and all those things, but I don't know, maybe there is something to it. Maybe they really are like, they do it the right way and we'll take care of you, in the end. I don't know, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of talk today and through the next week or two of, what we need to do. We need to change this up because we need to reward the bad teams more.
I think there are bigger fish to fry, but we'll get there at some point in time. You're the best. Thanks, Keith.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right. My thanks to Keith. Visit bettoredge.com. My thanks to them. One of our longest running sponsors here on the Spot Track podcast. Use code SPOTTRACK at registration, SPOTRAC. Get yourself $20 on the house. Get yourself the safest, most reliable social betting marketplace. Now available on the iOS App Store. Visit bettoredge.com and get cracking. For Scott Allen, my name is Mike Ginnitti. Thanks for listening to this edition of the Spot Track podcast.